Welcome to another edition of In the Field. I'm standing in one of our national variety trials at Wagga. This is one of 650 trial sites that GRDC supports right across the whole of Australia. And we support these trials so that you have the best possible information when it comes to selecting the varieties that you'll grow next year. Last year in the southern part of Australia, we saw varieties such as Emu Rock, Koorak and Mace do well in NPT trials. So it will be interesting to see the harvest data from this year to see if some of the newer varieties can out-yield them, like Trojan or Cobra. It's been a very mixed year for wheat production in Australia, and that will be reflected in the MVT results. So it is going to be interesting to look at the data under the various conditions we've had across Australia over the last season. GRDC is currently in the process of developing an MVT app, which you'll be able to download onto your iPhone or onto your iPad. And the idea of the app is to allow you to be able to customise the information that you want out of MVT and make it right for your farm so that you can get the best possible information when choosing a variety for next season. One thing that always gets a lot of interest when I talk with growers is frost. And when I was travelling through West Australia earlier in the year, doing a series of shed meetings, frost came up as number one or number two of the biggest issues facing growers in West Australia. But it's also an issue on the eastern seaboard. And we know recently we've had frost events up in the northern part of New South Wales and Queensland, and more recently a very late frost down in the southern region. Frost is certainly an issue which we take very seriously in GRDC. Over the last 10 years, we've spent more than $12 million on frost-related research. And we are just in the process of planning out and contracting the next phase of that program, which will be an investment of over $17 million in the next 5 years. I guess there's three areas that we're focusing on. The first one is looking at varieties that can cope better with frost, looking at genetic solutions. The second one is looking at management practices and what growers can actually do to try and minimise frost. And the third one is tools to help growers actually understand the risks associated with frost and select varieties and planting locations to minimise the frost risk. As a result of our previous research, we now have a reliable and accurate method for screening for frost tolerance. And that's really significant because that means we can now go out and screen material from all over the world to select the highest levels of frost tolerance and make those available to our breeders to be able to bring into our new wheat varieties. Since the last edition of In the Field, there's been several new varieties released from GRDC supported breeding programs. Firstly, Pulse Breeding Australia. We have two new chickpea varieties, PBA Maiden and PBA Monarch. Two new field pea varieties, PBA Coogee and PBA Wharton, and one new lentil, Hurricane XT. From the oat breeding program, we have a new oat variety called Williams, which in MVT trials yields 23% higher than its predecessor, Carolup. Herbicide-resistant weeds has been a big issue on the agenda this year, starting with a global herbicide resistance challenge conference earlier in the year, but even just going around talking to growers at shed meetings. Everywhere we go, questions have been asked about how do we manage herbicide resistance. And particularly in West Australia, it is a really significant challenge for the Australian grains industry. The GRDC has just released a series of videos on our webpage that help growers with integrated weed management. That series of videos are really practical and they're integrated into an online manual that helps to make sure that you are farming at best practice in relation to managing herbicide resistance. Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of In the Field. Thanks for watching and all the best for the festive season. Bye for now.